is up? What is up, everybody? However, you may be listening, wherever you may be listening, live on Super Bowl Sunday. It's the Houston Roundball Review presents Folks Talking Sports, presented by Five Star Properties. This show is sponsored by Five Star Properties, a Dallas-based company owned by a UH alum. If you are facing foreclosure or need to sell your house, as is for cash, call 972-532-SELL. That's 972-532-SELL, or visit their website at www.fivestarprops.com. That's FIVESTARPROPS.com. Now, on the cusp of the Super Bowl, we're just under 90 minutes now. You can never really be so sure when it comes to Super Bowl kickoff, but it's slated for 5:30 p.m. Central Time between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles. We'll get into that, of course. There's a lot to talk about when it comes to the sports world. When you look at the NBA with the trade deadline, the frenzy that it was, Kevin Durant ended up in Phoenix, Kyrie Irving, Dallas, a whole bunch of other players on the moves. I'd like to hear from you guys in the comments that are watching. Where would you like to have the conversation geared? Obviously, of course, there is a lot of Houston note or Houston interest in the Super Bowl, but since I'm a University of Houston alum, joining me on the show will be Kris Gardner of the Houston Roundball Review, who will be on it momentarily. He's currently in Tampa, in South Florida, because he covered the University of Houston Cougars women's basketball team's game against South Florida that just ended roughly an hour ago, and it was a big upset for the Houston Cougars. They went in there in Tampa and beat number 24 South Florida on their home floor. Now, the final score, the Houston Cougars pulled off the upset 71-69. Layla Blair for the Houston Cougars really was pivotal in that victory. She had a monster game for Houston. She had 30 points on 9 of 21 shooting. Really, the difference in that game for the Houston Cougars was how well they shot the ball from three. They finished the game overall 11 for 24 from the field as a team. Layla Blair herself had 6 of those 11 three-pointers. Layla Blair played all 40 minutes for the Cougars in their victory over South Florida. But when you look at top to bottom, Brittany Onyeje, she had 14 points. Bria Patterson had 11 points. Tierra Young had 13 points. And Tatiana Hill, who's not going to stand out from an on the box score perspective, she only ended up with 3 points, but she played a pivotal role when it came to her defense, and she was in a bit of foul trouble. They kind of hindered the Houston Cougars during those stretches there, and really the Cougars gave South Florida fits when it came to their full court pressure. It always seemed like South Florida was never playing comfortably. Certainly in the first half, it was a big reason why they were down double digits early. And I mean, again, going back to Layla Blair, she hit a pivotal shot right at the buzzer as the buzzer in the second quarter expired, and South Florida had cut it to within single digits, and then Layla Blair knocked down the three that extended it back to 12, and it really gave all the momentum back to Houston. Now, when it comes to the South Florida perspective, that was their first conference loss of the season. The loss that the Cougars handed them, they were perfect 11-0 heading into this game. Now, maybe not necessarily as surprising, as this is the second meeting between those two teams. Now, when Houston and South Florida played earlier in the season here in Houston, the Cougars actually gave them a lot of fits in that matchup as well, and maybe another game that the Cougars let slip away. But just overall, it seems like Houston it's been a good matchup for the Cougars in regards to South Florida this season. Now, if these two teams meet for third time, it'll be come the first weekend in March, or heading into the American Athletic Conference postseason tournament, when those two teams could potentially play again down the road in the American Athletic Conference championship game. And really, from a Houston, keeping it at a Houston perspective, while this win is great, it's a quad one victory for the Cougars. Obviously, a big road win, obviously by far their biggest win of the season. In retrospect, it still puts, kind of zooming back a little bit, it's a great win, but now with Houston, now that they've won 4 straight in a row, what they're going to have to continue to do is continue to be playing at that elite level, because for them, it's not about wins in the regular season. After the bit of a rough start that they had in non-conference slate, they had a rough start to start conference play this season as well. it's all about winning the American Athletic Conference postseason tournament to have a chance at making the NCAA tournament. It doesn't look likely that the Houston Cougars will be able to get an at-large bid when it comes to the women's NCAA tournament. So even though it's a big win, it's all about continuing to be streaking at the right time, which it appears like Houston is doing. They've now won 4 in a row heading into or following this big win over South Florida. Kris Gardner will be joining us momentarily. Once again, he's not on the show right now because he is in Tampa, Florida. Now, switching over to the men's side with men's basketball, they had an extended break for them. They did not play this weekend after playing on Wednesday and really what could have been their most dominant victory of the season so far against Tulsa. It was just, and I say most dominant. It's kind of interesting to know 13 minutes, around the 13-minute mark in the first half, Houston and Tulsa. It was, I believe, the Golden Hurricanes were leading Houston 12-10 at one point, and then the Cougars kind of just flipped the switch from that point on. And really, a big reason for that was Marcus Sasser, who had, I believe he went on a personal 12-0 run. He was on fire, and he was a big reason why Houston was able to create separation against Tulsa. Long story short, the Cougars came away with an 80-42 victory, and a lot of kind of shaking up when it comes to the top to college basketball. There could potentially be a new number one team when you look at the polls. I say potentially because we've seen that Purdue can lose in the past and still be the number one team in the country. I don't think that'll be the case in this upcoming poll that will be released at 11 a.m. in the morning Central Time on Monday. But number one, Purdue lost to the Northwestern Wildcats. Northwestern is a really, really good, scrappy team, and they flipped the switch at halftime. They had a strong second half performance to defeat number one Purdue. They suffered their third loss of the season now. So Houston at that number two spot could very potentially be, once again, for the third time this season, be a new number one team in all of college basketball when you look at those polls. But I think it's going to be interesting to note much needed rest, something that Houston Cougars head coach Kelvin Sampson said following that win against Tulsa. He has a good pulse of the Houston Cougars team, and he said one of the thing that his team really needs the most was rest. And he talked about how going back to January 17th when Houston was on the road in New Orleans against Tulane, that was really the stretch of a really tough road stretch for Houston where they played in New Orleans for that Tulane game. Then they had to travel back to Houston. They played Temple that following Sunday. That was the first meeting between the two where the Owls came in to the Fertitta Center and upset Houston. Then they had a quick turnaround. They had to fly out that following Tuesday to Orlando to play Central Florida. Then they had to fly back to Houston to host Cincinnati, fly back out to Kansas to play Wichita, and then from Wichita, a quick turnaround to Philadelphia to once again play Temple, and then finally they hosted Tulsa this past Wednesday. So it's been a bit of a brutal stretch when it comes to games, when it comes to practices, when it comes to the travel. So these extra games were huge. Kelvin Sampson said it's really what his team needed. But now we're really going to start getting into the meat and potatoes. This is a home stretch for the Houston Cougars, February 16, which is this upcoming Thursday. They'll be on the road once again, this time in Dallas, to play SMU for the second time this season. The last time these two teams met, which it was back in early January. I believe it was the first game of the calendar year here in 2023 when the Cougars absolutely demolished the Mustangs. It was not that close of a game. And then next Sunday, this is a game to keep an eye on and circle. It'll be the first meeting between Houston and Memphis. This will be home inside the Fertitta Center, and those games are always, those are kind of like the signature rivalry games so far, certainly in recent years in the American Athletic Conference. When it comes to Houston Cougars men's basketball, it'll be the first time that the Cougars see Penny Hardaway's team. Again, that'll be this upcoming Sunday at 2 p.m. Central Time between Houston and Memphis before seeing Tulane again this upcoming Wednesday, 2 weeks from now. It'll be February 22nd. They'll host Tulane again. And then they have to travel at East Carolina, Wichita State, Memphis, and then that's it for the regular season before the American Athletic Conference postseason tournament comes. So when you look at down the stretch for Houston, they're going to get that rest. That's pivotal. Now, something that Calvin Sampson said down the stretch is going to be huge for them is to continue to develop that freshman depth and just depth overall for the Houston Cougars. and it's something that Kelvin said all season long. When you look at the 5 rotational players, the 5 veterans that the team has, they have Marcus Sasser, Jamon Mark, Jamal Shed, Reggie Chaney, and Jawan Roberts. That's it when it comes to veteran players that have played minutes, significant role minutes for Houston in previous teams. Then you look at the 4 others who really, they're all freshmen. And if you ask Kelvin Sampson, there's 3 true freshmen. And then there's Javier Francis, who's technically a sophomore. But if you ask Kelvin Sampson, he's also a freshman just because of the lack of playing time that he's had when it comes to big, crucial moments. Now, what's going to be key for the Houston Cougars in these last few remaining regular season games as they head into the American Athletic Conference postseason tournament and, of course, into the NCAA tournament, it's going to be to, one, continue to develop them, but get all those freshmen to a point where they're comfortable with their roles. Now, Jarvis Walker, he's beginning to kind of directly quote Kelvin Sampson. His peaks are beginning to level out when it comes to his valleys. He's beginning to be much more of a consistent player. And I mean, he's been the starter for Houston in 24 of their 25 games. That lone exception was a game he didn't play due to an illness. But Emmanuel Sharp, he's been the first guard off the bench for Houston in really a lot of these games for the past 2 months. Javier Francis, who I mentioned, he's been at times the first big man off the bench for the Houston Cougars. It's kind of an interesting spot at big man because they do have Reggie Chaney in there, who's the veteran, and Kelvin Sampson can kind of count on him being kind of an anchor for the team whenever they might be in tough situations, whether it be against Temple. We saw whenever they made their run in the first half, they went to Reggie Chaney in those big moments. And of course, Terrance Arceneaux is that other freshman who, when it comes to rotational spots, they've kind of been up and down the last few games, but he's been that ninth piece when it comes to the Houston Cougars rotation. So all those players are going to be pivotal roles to continue to be at a point where they're comfortable in consistency heading down the stretch, because their NCAA tournament run very well could come down how comfortable those freshmen are come March. But on that note, I'd like to remind everyone that's watching that this is Folks Talking Sports presented by 5 Star Properties. If you are facing foreclosure and want to sell fast, visit www.5starprops.com. That's FIVESTARPROPS.com. They're a Dallas-based company owned by a UH alum. Once again, that's 5starproperties.com. For those of you just joining the show or who may be have been watching for the duration of it or listening to our audio only versions of the show, we want to hear from you. If you're watching on YouTube, feel free to comment in the chat and comment. Of course, this is Super Bowl Sunday. I'll give my pick'ems when it comes to the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles. I have Houston in my mind too much, but there are a lot of Houston ties, obviously, when it comes to Jalen Hurts, the starting quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles. Some interesting note, again, keeping it local from a Houston Cougars perspective, former quarterback Greg Ward was activated to the active roster for the Philadelphia Eagles in this game. I know there's a lot of Houston Cougar fans that would love to see, whether it be one play, a package for Greg Ward. I know in the past, when you look at Philadelphia and their history in the Super Bowl going back to 2017, when they had the Philly special against the New England Patriots, led to the Nick Foles touchdown. A lot of Houston Cougar fans have been speculating maybe that's the reason Greg Ward has been called up, and there's a play in the playbook to kind of have an extra thing in their back pocket, and the Eagles to kind of one up the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, when you look at that matchup, obviously it's been the 2 top teams that consistently throughout the NFL season have been 1 and 2 overall, especially when you look at the Eagles and the dominant stretch that they had in the NFC for much of the season. So Jalen Hurts got injured down that stretch and they started losing a couple of games. But overall, for the most part, it's been the 2 top teams. And it's no surprise that these are going to be the final 2 that are meeting in the Super Bowl. Now, when you look at the Kansas City Chiefs, I've been surprised that a lot of national media outlets have seen them as, or at least the conversations have been like that they're such heavy underdogs, which is so hard to think about when they have Patrick Mahomes, who at this point is clearly head and shoulders the best quarterback in the NFL. They have an elite talent in Travis Kelce, who, again, keeping it local, the Houston Texans Houston Texans fans know how much of a nightmare Travis Kelce can be. For the longest time that he's been on the Kansas City Chiefs, he has the ability to be a game wrecker at any point in the game. And overall, the Chiefs' defense has improved from previous years' teams. And you look at top to bottom, obviously, the biggest kind of point about the Kansas City Chiefs this offseason was when they lost Tyreek Hill, potentially having less explosive playmakers. But this year, it's really been strength in numbers from the Chiefs outside of Mahomes and Kelsey. When you look at it from the offensive perspective, they've had a lot of different players be able to step up and just be weapons for them, which I think has made them much more dangerous when you look at top to bottom. They've done a better job of creating, not just relying too much on Kelsey from a tight end position. They have a lot more weapons that they've been able to utilize. And I think that's going to be an interesting thing in this Super Bowl. I know the Philadelphia Eagles defense has been what's carried them up to this point into the Super Bowl. And then there's been a lot of argument about the Eagles, who necessarily their path to the Super Bowl has been when you look at the two quarterbacks that they faced in the New York Giants and Daniel Jones, who they really made his life a living pain during the divisional round in the postseason as they went on to beat the Giants. But then even against the San Francisco 49ers, where a lot of talk is they had to play the backup of the backup of the San Francisco 49ers. I guess technically it's the backup of the backup of the backup if you think of Trey Lance, who started this season as the quarterback one for the San Francisco 49ers. But Brock Purdy had been playing really good for San Francisco leading up into the NFC Championship game. And it was the Philadelphia Eagles defense that knocked him out of the game. And really that pass rush, how veteran it is, obviously, of course, led by Fletcher Cox up front, has been giving teams problems, and that's the big reason why they were able to take Brock Purdy out of the game. Now, Patrick Mahomes, something that's been said about his maybe not necessarily being 100% healthy. I don't necessarily buy into that just in terms of his ankle. He was able to play in the AFC Championship game against Cincinnati, and he looked, you could see in stretches that it was bothering him a bit, especially when he might cut a certain way. But I think overall, it hasn't really been to the point where by this point, he's had, I believe now, it'll be 3 weeks since the injury occurred. He should be much more healthy, and I don't foresee that being an issue in this game. But joining me, the other or one of our other co-hosts here on Folks Talking Sports, Willy Gibson. How are you doing, sir?
Good, gentlemen. Sir, it's just you today. I'm sorry. Good. Good,
Sorry,
Andy. How are you?
been a lot of rambling. I've been good. It's been a lot of rambling, but I'm some way I made my way into the Super Bowl, which of course Super Bowl Sunday. It might be the biggest day of the year when it comes to American culture overall, not just NFL fans, sports fans in general. Now, look at the matchup. I was talking about the kind of storyline that's been put forth. I feel like there's been a lot of national outlets that have kind of seen the Kansas City Chiefs as underdogs. And I was talking about, I don't necessarily buy that when you have Patrick Mahomes on the other side, but I'm curious to get your thoughts on that.
No, no, they're not. In my opinion, no, they're not an underdog at all. I mean, they come in. I mean, of course, Travis Kelsey, but Patrick Mahomes is on tap to be the youngest quarterback to start three Super Bowls. So
Mhm.
the third Super Bowl versus a team, Jalen Hurts, second year starter, third year in the league. I think that's no. I don't see Kansas City as an underdog at all.
Now, who do you think is going to come out victorious in this game and why?
Um, I would definitely I look for Kansas City to come out on top just because of that experience. You know, Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid versus Nick Sirianni. I think that the experience goes a long way in games like this, and the nuances of the game, the long halftime, things like that. People talk about those type things all the time, and I think Kansas City has a team that's built to win this. They've been there before. They know what it takes, um, and based on those things, I think Kansas City comes out on top.
I tend to agree. I would, if I had to pick, I would say I'm feeling towards Kansas City. Now, in researching for the show and talking about the Super Bowl, I think it's interesting. I found this Yahoo Sports article where it was talking about a lot of kind of it has nothing to do with on the field stuff, but apparently a lot of bad luck things that are going against Kansas City in this matchup. I'm gonna read some of them because
Mhm.
I'm sure you're gonna get a kick out of it. But apparently the Kansas City Chiefs are gonna have to overcome the Drake curse, and that is gonna come Drake the rapper. Apparently he bet $700,000 on the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl, which I don't know if you're aware of the Drake curse, but there's been this long time, this goes back years, where teams that Drake tends to support end up being the ones that lose. Now, I think if you look at kind of the only team that's been immune for that the last few years is going back to 2019 when the Toronto Raptors came out victorious and won the NBA championship over the Golden State Warriors. But outside of that, there's been a lot of speculation that teams that Drake supports don't necessarily tend to do good. This is more superstition, but going to Philadelphia, obviously that's where the Eagles are from, and the historic Rocky Balboa statue, there's superstition where if you're if you're a fan of opposing teams, don't mess with the Rocky Balboa statue. And Travis Kelce was one of the players that said, if you're in Philly, don't do anything. Don't try to give us some bad luck. And apparently, a couple of Kansas City Chiefs fans went up to the statue. They put Kansas City propaganda on the statue, and apparently, that's bad luck for the Chiefs as well. So obviously, when you come to the Super Bowl, there's a whole bunch of different stuff, speculation. I think there was the zoo picks where they picked literally animals from the zoo to pick the Super Bowl, and a lot of them picked the Eagles as well. So there's a lot of things that maybe the Chiefs will overcome, but I agree with you, Will. I tend to agree that Kansas City I feel like they're going to win just because, like you said, Patrick Mahomes. I think overall they had the best player on the field, and I think explosively overall they've shown that they've just been able to find ways to win. And like you said, they've been here before. This is their third Super Bowl. They've been in the AFC Championship game for the last 5 years. They know how to have postseason success. And I think kind of similar to, and it's interesting when you look at the MLB where the Philadelphia Phillies made it to the World Series as well. Kind of a similar situation where the Astros were the team where they've been into that postseason success so far. And even though they were down 2-1 in that series, they found a way to execute down the stretch and come away with the victory. I kind of see that the Chiefs would be in a similar position as the Astros. And really, they're kind of the similar spots when you look at what they've been able to do from a success standpoint in their respective sports. Now, while we were talking about the Super Bowl, Kris Gardner joined us and hopped on here on Folks Talking Sports. Like I mentioned at the top of the show, he still is in Tampa as he was covering the Houston Cougars women's basketball team, and they're upset over number 24 South Florida. But before I send it over to Kris, I'd like to remind everybody that this is Folks Talking Sports presented by 5starprops.com. If your house needs too many repairs and you want to sell as is, visit 5starprops.com. That's FIVESTARPROPS.com. They are a Dallas-based company owned by a UH alum, and they are today's primary sponsor of Folks Talking Sports. Kris, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, fellas. I'm just going to say this. Y'all know that when I was a fan of the NFL football franchise, I'm going to lean on that loyalty for a prediction today. NFC East. It's a team in the NFC East in the big game. I'm picking that team. Unless it was the Cowgirls. It ain't the Cowgirls. So I'm picking the Eagles to beat the Kansas City team. But yeah, in Tampa, if I would not have been here, I would not have believed it. To see this game that the Houston Cougars won over South Florida 71-69, a game that the Cougs did not trail at all. The game was tied 3 times, but the Cougs led by double digits, I think. Layla Blair scored a career high, 30 points, had 22 in the first half, including a half-court shot to beat the halftime buzzer. They held on. Okay, they held on. Layla said after the game, and I'm having Wi-Fi problems here in the hotel, so I couldn't upload the interview I did with her after the game. She said she wasn't tired. She played the whole 40 minutes. She looked tired down the stretch. Okay, she looked tired, but they held on. They didn't shoot free throws great, only 12 for 23. They committed a foul down the stretch, up 4.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh my gosh, they're going to find a way to lose this game. But they held on and won. They were hyped about it. Coach Hughey, surprisingly, was pretty even keel after the game, doing the little post game, talking to us, me and Jerry Lee Woodley. But he was pretty even keel. He said it's all part of the process, getting better for the conference tournament, which starts in a few weeks, and be ready for Fort Worth. And the team's goal is to be playing on March 9th, because that is the championship game of the AAC women's basketball tournament. So they did enough to win, unlike non-conference, they did enough to lose. So big win for the Cougs. They're 7-3 in the conference, in second place. So, hey, surprised a lot of folks except everybody in that locker room. So kudos to them. And I already got some jokes from some of my buddies, alums, that today's win is going to give a lifetime contract for Coach Hughey, or a 5-year deal for Coach Hughey. But let's be real. The objective is still to reach the NCAA tournament. And they have yet to do that under Coach Hughey. Great win today. Today just shows what they're capable of doing. That's what it shows me. But getting to the tournament is the objective. Go ahead, Andy.
Like you said, that March 9th, that's the target. That's something that head coach Ron Hughey told us during his media availability before the South Florida game. He said, live in the moment, don't look too far ahead, but they are very well aware that that's their goal for the season. March 9th, the championship game in the American Athletic Conference postseason tournament. And as good of his win as it was for Houston, just in terms of it being a quad one, dethroning number 24 South Florida in Tampa, which I find it interesting that it met twice this season, and it looks like Houston's a good matchup against South Florida over the course of those two games. I will say it; they've both kind of come down to the wire. The game here in Fertitta Center, Houston couldn't make enough plays to pull out a victory. In Tampa, like you said, they did just enough to hang on and win. But come March 9th, or come the American Athletic Conference tournament, because at the very least, they have to win 2 more games before they reach the championship tournament, or the championship game in the American Athletic Conference tournament. But regardless of this win, that's not going to change the fact that they have to win the American Athletic Conference tournament to make it to the NCAA tournament, because they're not going to be in that large bid. No. So there's only one way to, like you said, do something that they haven't been able to do under head coach Ron Hughey.
And that's reality. Will, you know this. You've been a part of us enough to know this. Today's win is nice, but they still have not reached the NCAA tournament under Coach Ron Hughey. And that's the bottom line. That's just a fact. Winning today is nice. It showed the capabilities of this team. But if they fail to make the tournament again this season, I'm still advocating for a new coach for the Big 12, first team in the Big 12 for next season. That hasn't changed. Yeah, that's 7-3 in conference play. Part of that, I think, is because this conference is not the Big 12. I'm not convinced what they're doing in the American would work long-term in the Big 12. But they made 11 threes today. South Florida only made 4. South Florida crushed them on the boards, 41-24. I think one of South Florida's players, Dulcie Fancom Minjaju, she had 19 points and 19 rebounds. I think that's what, 19 and 19.
Wow.
So she almost out-rebounded the Cougs herself. She had 19, the Cougs had 24. They had no answer for her. The Cougs got in foul trouble the first 3 quarters, but the refs called it differently in the fourth quarter a little bit. The Cougs went to the line a lot in the fourth quarter, but missed free throws, which helped South Florida hang around and get back in the game and tie the game up. But once again, the Cougs upset top 25 ranked South Florida, 71-69 in Tampa. Salute to the fans who were there, because they were not like other fans of women's basketball who were watching LSU South Carolina playing at the same time as the Cougs South Florida game. But, and it's a different perspective, because South Florida, I think, is their first loss in conference play. So they have still a 2 game lead over in the loss column. So they're still going to the tournament. They're going to the tournament, whether they're
going to be the number 1 seed in the conference tournament.
So none of that. So it wasn't gloom and doom for them. None of that. So they're just like, our streak is over, on to the next. So it wasn't a big deal for them. But ironically, 2-point win for the Cougs. South Florida's assistant coach was called for a technical foul in the game, late in the game, because she stayed out of the coach's box. So the ref teed her up. Layla Blair made the 2 free throws. The Cougs won by 2. So the assistant coach, she was doing the duties for head coach Jose Fernandez, who was not feeling well. He was at the game, but he was not feeling well. So she took over most of the duties. And post-game, she said she was trying to communicate from what Coach Fernandez was saying to her, as well as to the players on the floor. And she got carried away with where she was, and she was at half court. Okay, she was at half court, so well past the coach's box. And she stood there. She just hung around there, and the ref just said, "Okay, second." And she teed her up, and then she owned up to it because I saw her walk back to the bench, and she told Coach Fernandez, "I'm sorry, my fault." But those 2 free throws were key because it turned out being difference in the game. And she did post game as well. So she was talking to the media while I was talking to Coach Hughey and Layla Blair. But hey, it's a big win for the Cougs. Still got to win the tournament to get to the big dance. And I guess, Andy, you could answer this. You have your update on Terrance Arceneaux's ankle. I haven't heard anything more. I don't believe it's serious. From Wednesday, right? It was Wednesday? It's all one together.
Yes, sir. Wednesday night. All these, they start to run together. But yeah, to answer Boom Boom D's comment on the live stream on YouTube, any update on Terrance Arceneaux's ankles? And no, similar to you, Kris, we don't have any updates. The last few days have kind of been a reset for the Houston Cougars men's basketball team. They'll have media availability tomorrow around 5 o'clock. So there'll probably be an update on Terrance then. But just, again, what Kelvin said after that game, it was a rolled ankle, and he didn't talk about how severe it was, but hopefully the last few days of not having a game for them has allowed Terrance to be able to get a lot of treatment on it, and hopefully it's anything more serious than that.
Yeah, and Terrance was, eventually he walked off the court. He limped, but, he didn't need to be helped off the court. So it didn't look bad or look too serious. So with this time off and not playing again until Thursday this week, he'll play. We'll find out more Monday. Not going to speculate. SMU, they did beat Temple. So I won't say Terrance won't be needed Thursday, but if his ankle could use more time off, John Houston will not play him Thursday if they can avoid it. So just keep that in mind going forward with the Cougs. But Mr. Gibson.
Yes, sir.
Ohio State men's basketball. What are they doing? What have they done?
They haven't done anything. They lost today, 62-41 to Michigan State, to drop to 11-14, 3-12 now in the Big Ten Conference.
So 3-12, they're not going to the tournament, the big dance, unless they win the Big Ten.
No, and to win the Big Ten, you're looking at winning 5 games in 5 nights, and that's not going to happen.
Yeah. So in that scenario, is it time for a new coach?
Depends who you believe, because Gene Smith 2 weeks ago gave Chris Holtmann the proverbial vote of confidence. And then shockingly, last Monday, in his media availability, Chris Holtmann said, "We're fine. Gene and I talked about this beginning of the season. He knew where we were, and this was to be expected." So.
Okay. 3-12. Well, at that point, they were what 3-10? Maybe at that point.
At that point, yep. So now they lost today. So losing today, you have this week road games at Iowa, at Purdue. According to Chris Holtmann, he's good. It's all good. I'm good. Me and Gene talked about it. He knows. Oh, okay. So we shall see. And again, Gene gave him the proverbial, some call it the kiss of death, the vote of confidence. And we'll see.
Have you guys talked about SMU discussion to the Pac-12 yet?
We have not. We also need to get into NBA trade deadline talk as well. A crazy Thursday that was, but we can start with the Pac-12.
Well, I heard that Arizona State would be a no on the vote to add SMU.
Add SMU. Interesting.
I'm not sure of the. I think there'd have to be 3 no votes, and I'm not sure there are 3 no votes to say no to SMU. I think Arizona State is so far the only one to leak out or be public about that as a no to join the conference. But I think previous early shows of Folks Talkin Sports, we talked about the Pac-12 should have added Houston when they had the chance, and now they're going to possibly add SMU. The commissioner was at the game a few days ago, even though pictures were taken of him at the game, and there was no comment from him nor the conference office about the possibilities of SMU joining the Pac-12, excuse me. But okay, San Diego State, SMU. Will, what do you? Does either of those move the needle for you going to the Pac-12?
No.
Does it make sense from a Pac-12 perspective to you?
No. I mean, they need numbers. I mean, from their perspective, they need numbers. Sure. But SMU hasn't moved the needle in almost 50 years since Eric Dickerson and Craig James and anything. So, no. I'm trying.
How about you, Andy? Does it move the needle for you?
No, absolutely not. Especially when you think about who's leaving UCLA and USC, and to add whether it be San Diego State, SMU, or if it's both of them, no, it doesn't move the needle. Especially when it comes to any. I don't know how you could be ESPN or Fox and see that move and think, oh, now that you have SMU, maybe we can add an extra few $1 million to TV contract. No, especially when you look at SMU, and even in the Dallas market, they're not even number one in their own city.
True, but I mean, honestly, neither is UH and Houston.
Wow.
For the most part, coming Longhorns, Aggies.
Come October 21, it will be the number one market in the city. It'll be the number one team in the city.
That's right. Andy Yanez, and it's guaranteed the Cougars football team will beat the Longhorns on October 21st. He's not changing it. He guarantees it. Right, Andy?
I don't know.
He guarantees it. So we can talk about that as well as the conference finally agreeing. Excuse me, the Big 12. Well, here we go. Andy Yanez.
Guarantee. It would be a reminder every time we start.
Oh yeah, we're gonna ride this until October 21st. No question.
It's over 8 months.
So yeah, every show we're gonna be doing Andy Yanez. Remember, Andy Yanez guarantees UH Cougars football will beat the Longhorns at TD ECU Stadium.
Guarantee. I don't care if they go 1-11. That'll be the one to win. But I did want to bring up this comment by Boom Boom D. He says UNL guarantee.
All right,
guarantee
there we go.
Twice. But there's an interesting point. Do you guys think that UNLV makes more sense than SMU? And of course, UNLV, the University of Las Vegas. From a regional standpoint, it certainly is.
Of course, yeah, but money-wise,
yeah, definitely.
Money and what we're trying to say, the Mustangs got older money. SMU has older money than UNLV. The Texas market, football-wise, is much better, fertile recruiting ground than Las Vegas. But yeah, regionally, no one thinks regionally anymore. They don't care about the student athletes' well-being in all this. So adding the Dallas market, the Texas market, that's the rationale behind it. It might be inevitable. But yeah, clearly it's a better geographical fit.
No, looking at the SMU, I think SMU in many ways is a worse It's an interesting final comparison. I do agree. Like Houston, when you look at Houston and University of Houston in specific, they're in competition, of course, with UT and Texas A&M. Those are the two biggest schools that are competing when it comes to the Houston market. I think when you look at Dallas, not only is UT and Texas A&M a factor in it as well, but you got to think about it too. I mean, Oklahoma's a factor too. Obviously, I think the big one when you look at it from the Big 12 standpoint, TCU is a factor there as well. So I think you could make the argument that there's much more competition in Dallas with kind of the piece of the pie for attention in specifically that Dallas market than you would say University of Houston has against just UT and A&M.
Agreed. So they're desperate. They're desperate for content. That's what this is from a conference perspective. They're desperate for content for the media partners, even if it is on Amazon and ESPN. They want the content for the partners, and that's what it is. But let's talk about the NBA, the deals. It sounds like the 14 deal with Golden State and Detroit and Atlanta and Portland is going to finally happen. But I got to ask you, the question surrounding Gary Payton II, GP2's core muscle injury, the Portland medical staff says that they did not, an organization says they did not give Gary Payton II any Toradol shots or pills or tablets or whatever for his pain. I think it's Shams and other media said they did give GP2 that. Gary's agent said yesterday that he did not take any Toradol shots. But today, another report says that there is an indication that he was taking and were receiving Toradol for his pain, and that the Warriors might file a complaint with the league to investigate that side of the pain medication or whatever they were giving, how they were treating Gary's injury, but they're still going to okay the trade and go forward with it and have Gary Payton on the squad, even though he may not be able to play, be clear to play medically for it, but 3 to 4 months. But the whole issue, somebody's lying. There's got to be something going on. I mean, couldn't it truly just, Gary, Mr. Payton, were you taking any pills? Were you getting any shots? Simple yes or no, right? It shouldn't be that complicated, right?
I think so, and more so than that, he played against the Warriors Wednesday night.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm like, wait a minute. And to complicate it further, he suffered the injury playing for the Warriors last season.
Right.
So it goes back to last season when he was a member of the Warriors. So I mean, it's complex all the way around. So yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, I mean, he said that the injury's taken longer to heal than they initially thought. He said, there's a quote from him, yeah, I've been playing in pain. I'm gonna thug it out. Come on, man. Come on, thug it out. Toughness. You getting paid regardless, man. So you gotta thug it out at all or not. If
Right.
you're in pain, if you're getting shots or medication, that's a problem. Okay, that should be a simple yes or no answer. So, but trade-wise, the Warriors are doing this, one, because they thought he could help them immediately, but also they wanted to lower their luxury tax burden, even though they're making money hand over fist. But still, why pay $180 million in luxury tax if you can only pay 100? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
But out of all the deals in the last few weeks, which one surprised you the most? Which one do you think will have the biggest impact? I mean, clearly it's got to be the Eric Gordon deal going to the Clippers, right? That just set the NBA on fire. It just turned the NBA upside down, right? Right, Will?
Yeah,
Andy?
Kris, that's the homecoming that everybody in the NBA has got to be shaking in their boots. When you look at the needle move that the Clippers did, and they've got to be favored in the Western Conference. No, in all seriousness, it has to be Kevin Durant to the Phoenix Suns. There's no ifs and or buts.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the big move. That's the headliner. And that's certainly the most surprising one as well, because I can't remember if it might have been Woj or Shams. I want to say it was Shams, but I'm not entirely too sure. A few days ago, I had reported that Kevin Durant had met with the Brooklyn Nets, and it seemed like they were going to at least ride it through for the rest of the season after the Kyrie Irving trade. And there was a great article output. I believe it was on ESPN Plus, where they kind of talked about the behind the scenes of that trade. And Kevin Durant specifically didn't want it to be leaked. He didn't want it to be a big show. He wanted to go to Phoenix, and he wanted it to be done relatively quick and in the darkness of the night. Essentially, he didn't want no media noise to be around it, and it got done. And give credit to Phoenix Suns, who they themselves are in a transition phase when you look at it from an ownership standpoint. I believe that they had to speed up that process of there was something along those ownership lines where it didn't go as a traditional sense, and that's could potentially be one of the factors that led to Kevin Durant being in Phoenix too. But when you look at the Suns, they're just now 2 years removed from making it to the NBA Finals on their own, with the core of Chris Paul, Devin Booker, and DeAndre Ayton. They still have those three intact, and now you're adding Kevin Durant. I think it's reported that Terrance Ross is going to be added. He's going to be signing with the Suns in the coming days, which, I mean, that's a nice fit for them in the buyout markets. I'm sure they'll have other players that go to play to Phoenix or go to play for Phoenix in the next few weeks or days. But that's got to be, I think it opens the window up for the Suns to be championship contenders for the next 2 years, and it's certainly championship or bust for them in these next two, or I guess this next year, really, for the next two seasons. When you look at it top to bottom in any team, but certainly in the West, there's not really a team that has overall as much talent as Phoenix. I think the question will be how quickly can they come together and learn how to gel with each other. That could potentially be the question mark, because when you look at teams, I think Denver's kind of the big team that they're the team that's gelled together. They know what it's like to play with each other. Obviously, of course, led by Jokic. So I think that could be a team that potentially could give Phoenix the most problems, just in terms of how comfortable they are. But talent-wise, Phoenix has got to be the clear-cut favorite, and there's not really anyone else that's matches, in my opinion.
Okay, go ahead, because I think
you
thinking the same thing I'm thinking. But go.
One, because my audience asked me this last night on Let's Talk Houston Rockets, so I'm prepared for the discussion now. I picked Phoenix as my team to beat in the West last night. Their starting five is legit. Clearly, best starting five in the West, clearly. But if they're healthy, their starting five is legit. CP, old and banged up. KD is older and banged up. Devin Booker is banged up. So if they're healthy, roll. It can be rolling.
They have a great coach. Great coach,
but their depth is not as good now because they traded a lot to get KD. So that's a big, that's another question. Is their health? Can they stay healthy? And then their depth. I'd even say Denver is my second team, even though Joker's putting up another almost video game like numbers for Denver. But no one's afraid of Denver, mainly because
I agree with that.
They haven't done it yet.
Yep.
I mean, they're the best team in the West record-wise right now, but no one's afraid of Denver. Honestly, Phoenix is up there. Dallas with Kyrie and Luka.
They're an interesting wild card.
They're interesting because they can score a lot of buckets, but you got questions about them. So there's a lot of question marks with these
and their
teams.
Defense.
And their defense. That's one of the questions.
I think that's probably the biggest thing that could potentially hinder Dallas. I don't feel like they really have a defensive anchor down in the middle. And I mean, you look at their bigs, who they have. I think from a Houston perspective, obviously Christian Wood, who played a few seasons here for the Rockets. I think that could be something that gets exploited come the postseason, regardless of the overall talent that they have with Luka and Kyrie.
Aiden and Joker would destroy Christian Wood, no doubt. That'd be like, seriously, y'all going to help this man because he cannot guard me. Come on, y'all got some double team down here because, what does Shaq say? Barbecue chicken all day long. Christian Wood, please. Come on now, whatever. But it's bold moves. The balance of power, I think, with these deals this week has shifted back toward the West a little bit. I'm not sure, putting on my Detroit Piston hat, I'm not sure of what James Wiseman can bring to the team. I think he and Jalen Duren could play together because James Wiseman is more of a power forward than he is a center. but his defense is not very good.
Were they in Memphis together, or had
No.
Wiseman already left?
James already left. I
Okay.
mean, he only played 3 games.
Right.
So,
well, yeah, but
yeah,
on
I don't
the
think
team.
that Jalen during he was asked that I think Thursday. He said they did not play together. No. But Wiseman's defense is a rumor. So trading Sadiq Bey, that was inevitable. Folks inside the organization to cover the team, it was inevitable. Sadiq Bey was almost getting to a point of the money he wanted was almost like Christian Wood type money. Sadiq, you ain't that. Okay. It's good of you to think that highly of yourself, but no, you're not going to get the kind of money here. So Detroit trading him, they did that. Sadiq's defense is not very good either. He's a streaky shooter. So Detroit's trying to go in a different direction. But the Rockets, I mean, check it out. The Rockets traded Eric Gordon. John Wall is going to be waived. Danny Green, Mr. Gibson. Has it been announced? Has it been announced from the team?
Not officially,
okay.
But
it's not official yet.
It's pretty much
going to sign with the Cavs. So Rockets have for the deals they have Justin Holiday and Frank Kaminsky to show for these deals, and the pick swap and 2 picks from OKC in 24 and 25. But Eric Gordon, let's pour some off Eric Gordon. He's finally out of here. The Clippers wish him well.
Officially, all pieces of the 65-win Rockets team is now gone from the roster.
It's now done. Yep. So, but yeah, Rafael Stone finally did something. Got rid of, in my message, got rid of Eric Gordon. Yeah, because I thought he wore out his welcome here toward the end with his public comments and team about improving and his tweet emojis and all that kind of stuff, all of it, But he was professional here, and it's not often in a press release of a trade where you get a quote from a general manager thanking the guy you traded for his time and served with the franchise. Eric was a professional here. We wish him the best. Okay, Rafael, was that necessary? I mean, to put in the press release. But anyway, whatever. Rockets in that cap space. Then no elite free agent is going to sign with the Rockets this summer. So they have to fill that space via trade, and that's probably the best route anyway. But Willy Gibson, how can Danny Green help the Cleveland Cavaliers?
Big time in several ways. One, he is a 3-point shooter and a defender that they desperately need on the wing. He's and the big talk all year, and rightfully so, and true, is that Donovan Mitchell comes in and he brings playoff experience. Well, Danny Green brings championship experience. 3 championships in his career with 3 different teams. Mm-hmm. He comes home. He's a second-round pick in 2009 of the Cleveland Cavaliers, spent his rookie year in Cleveland. At that time, he was known to some colleagues and friends as Dancing Danny Green, because it was one of LeBron's dancers. LeBron, if you notice if you remember around that time, LeBron had the handshakes and the dancing, the pregame, and all his team, and they took pictures. Well, Danny Green's role, he was one of the dancers. We called him Dancing Danny Green. And so now he's coming back with 3 championships as the vet, along with Kevin Love, who's fallen out of rotation, but is still actually filling a huge role for this team. But Danny Green now comes in to fill a role on the court, but more importantly, fill a role in the locker room as a championship caliber player that can score and can stabilize and be an anchor for the bench going into the playoffs.
Andy, I'm going to ask you, and Will as well. The Rockets, part of the trade, they waived Boban. But they are expected, according to the Chronicle Jonathan Fagan, to re-sign Boban. Boban is such a well-loved individual across the NBA. But do you guys believe any other team would have signed him to finish out the season if the Rockets didn't sign him again, re-sign him?
Probably not.
Would they? They always could have. Did any other team around the league really need to
Boban's
make
he's
moves?
gonna clear waivers. There's no question.
Yeah.
So do you believe, Andy? I'll ask you. Do you believe any other team other than the Rockets would have signed Boban to finish the season?
I would say no, but you never know.
See, I think the Rockets. I mean, they did it to free up because of the trade to free up the space. Had to let somebody go. But like I said, Boban's a great dude. He's hilarious, great person.
Mm-hmm.
But what does he add to a team on the court? He's another locker room guy, Will.
Yeah.
But other than the Rockets this season, I don't think anybody would have signed him to finish out the year to be a locker room guy, especially a playoff team.
Mm-hmm.
But your thoughts overall, Andy, you two, and Will, about John Wall coming back to the Rockets to be waived? I think it's the ultimate. I think it's the ultimate lesson for everyone to never burn your bridges, because you never know what's going to end up, how things are going to shake up, and when you have to be a part of maybe a certain, answer to your team or whatever. I guess in this case, team, but companies, if you're looking at it from a normal perspective, when you'd have to go back, I think it's certainly a funny way to look at it after the comments that he had about the Rockets and coaching staff and management just a few weeks ago that went viral in terms of talking about how the things had been run for the Rockets when he was here. Not in a good way for those of you that may have not heard it, which I'm pretty sure most have. But I mean, it just really shows what the business of the NBA is like. At the end of the day, it's a business. And I mean, that's the bottom line. They don't care what may have been said, and it's all cutthroat, because now John Wall, once again, is going to be trying to find a new home after, kind of ironically, being on the Rockets for a little long, getting paid not to play, just to wind up for the Clippers, and then he's kind of in the same situation again. And I wonder how that call went to let John know, from the Clipper perspective or the Rockets perspective. Hey, man, we'll trade you to the Rockets. What? Or from the Rockets perspective, yeah, John, we're trading for you, but we're going to waive you. You better. I'm not going to play for y'all. I mean,
right.
How did that conversation go? But as of Friday, I haven't received an email update since, but as of Friday, Rafael Stone said during his media call that the deal was not yet done, was not yet official. But once it's official, John Wall will be waived. This is despite the fact we received an email press release Thursday night announcing the trade. So we all think the deal is done, but Rafael said that it wasn't on Friday. So I don't know. And, of course, Rafael also mentioned in that he had spoken to Danny Green and that he had not received an indication one way or the other what Danny was thinking. But Rafael said it was possible that Danny was going to choose to stay with the Rockets for the rest of the season. He said that. He kind of hinted at that.
He didn't say that. I believe you. No, you. But I'm saying,
yeah, he said, yeah, Danny didn't say that, but he said the conversations, that speaking to Danny, you could go 50-50 basis, what Rafael said. And I'm like, come on, Rafael, really?
Cut it out.
Stop. But then, I mean, Andy, you go ahead and do the live read for 5-star props as we wind it up here on this edition of Folks Talkin Sports. For sure, for everyone that may be watching live on the Houston Roundball Review YouTube channel or listening to the audio-only versions of Folks Talkin Sports, we'd like to give a big thank you to today's primary sponsor of Folks Talkin Sports. If your house has had fire damage, water damage, or even toxic mold, and you'd like to sell as is for cash, visit www.5starprops.com. That's FIVESTARPROPS.com. They're a Dallas-based company owned by a UH alum. Once again, that's 5-Star Properties. That's FIVESTARPROPS.com. And 5-Star Properties is the primary sponsor of today's episode of Folks Talking Sports. So let's wrap it up with predictions on the big game. Mr. Gibson, you first. How can folks find you on social media? And who you got? And give me a score.
They can find me as the Carl States at Will Gibson 7 on Twitter and IG, at Will Knowles. And contrary to you, Mr. Gardner, as a fellow NFC East team supporter, I cannot root for the team in green. So I will, and I'll go ahead and predict the Chiefs will win. You said a score?
Yes.
34-21.
All right.
That would have you, the Chiefs covering the spread, which it's basically a pick 'em. The Eagles are favored by 1 point heading into the game.
What do you say, Mr. Yanez?
I agree with Will. I feel like the Kansas City Chiefs are going to win. This is going to be their third Super Bowl within the last few years. Obviously, of course, like I mentioned, I think they have the best quarterback head and shoulders, not just in the Super Bowl matchup, but just the best quarterback, period, in all of the NFL right now. I think they have overall the better talent on offense. I think it'll be interesting to see how Philadelphia's defense matches up, but I got the Chiefs and I have the Chiefs winning. I think it'll be a little bit of a lower scoring affair, but I have Kansas City winning 24-20 over Philadelphia, and I think Patrick Mahomes is going to lead a game-winning drive in this Super Bowl.
All right, I got the Eagles winning 31-27. So we shall see who was correct on that. But thank you as always. Oh, and of course, you can catch me on Twitter at @VHRReview. Website HoustonRoundballReview.com, Houston Roundball Review on YouTube and Instagram. And I'm going to start to post comments from Layla Blair and Ronald Hughey from today's win over South Florida in Tampa, which is where I am. Cougs won 71-69 to improve to 7-3 in the American, and they ended South Florida's 12-game win streak. But Andy Yanez, thank you very much for running and controlling things until I was able to hop on. I love technology. That's one thing we are learning here on the Houston Roundball Review on YouTube and this streaming platform, as different folks can control everything. We're going to give Willy Gibson the keys to the kingdom one day too, to have him run everything and help us out and do his own thing as well going forward the rest of 2023 and in the future. All right, so the game is a few minutes away, I believe, right?
Yes, sir. 5:30 p.m. Central kickoff.
All right. I'm going to go feed my face and enjoy some water. Water. That's what I'm going to call it, is water.
All right.
So you guys take care. I'll be back in Houston tomorrow, Monday morning. And then, Andy, you and I will be part of Let's Rage Cougs Thursday, right? Thursday.
Yes,
The
sir.
Cougs
Thursday.
game at
Be another Let's Rage Cougs After Dark. I believe that's a 6 p.m. tip-off.
Yeah, it's not too late. So 6 o'clock. So looking forward to that. And I'm kind of curious to see where the bracketologies and the polls have Purdue now after today's loss against Northwestern.
Last week they lost and they stayed at number one. That never rubbed me the wrong way with these polls, but I don't think they'll be number one next week or tomorrow, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not saying Northwestern, Temple and blah, 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 but I'm just saying, losing to Northwestern, losing to Temple by a point instead of losing Northwestern by 6 or 8. I'm just saying one of these things, not like the other. I'm just saying that out there, but, it won't be an issue going forward in a few months when the Cougs no longer in a supposedly, I guess, inferior conference, because that's what everybody
mid-major. Did you see what Jeff Goodman tweeted out about? I don't know who it was. Like the Field of 68 called the American Athletic Conference a mid-major. And it just reminded me of what Calvin Sampson said way back when he first took the job at Houston.
But it'll be an issue for Rice and everybody else going forward in Memphis. Sorry for y'all. Sorry, Memphis. Oh well. But anyway, until next time, thank you very much to Willy Gibson and Andy Yanez, and we will see you. Enjoy the big game, everyone out there. And come back again for more content on the Houston Roundball Review on YouTube. Peace.